Deep friendship doesn't actually come from where we think it comes from. I don't know if it was being a hairdresser for 15 years and just what I learned from behind the chair that gave me the ability to really know how to connect deeply with others and myself feel seen and heard and understood, and is so life-giving to be in that place where you feel known and cared for and that you can know and care for others. In the church, I think we accidentally do some things that actually hinder and block that from truly happening. And once we learn what those things are, we can undo them in a way that we can actually have fulfilling deep friendships, I think the way that Jesus intended for us to have them. Hi, I'm Jenny. Welcome to my channel. I help Christians to close the gap between what they know in their heads and what they experience in real life. Welcome to my channel. So I've been a church leader for over a decade now. My husband and I church planted. We went to Bible college about 15 years ago. And I have spent the last 8 to 10 years intentionally really learning about past theology into the daily life, how to connect deeply with the Lord in intimacy so that we can really live that abundant life that I believe Jesus died to give us. Unfortunately, many of us don't really know how to obtain that in a real way. For years, I was trying all the wrong things. I was working harder, doing more, sacrificing more. I was surrendering more, tithing more, serving more, learning more, studying more quiet times. And none of that filled the gap of really me feeling seen and known and heard and safe in my relationship with God and with others. And so I love to share the things that I learned from my own experience, and then even like the science and theology to back those things up. Today, while I'm working on refreshing my outdoor patio, let's talk about it. Before I share the two most important keys to deep friendships, I want to talk about some of the things that we get wrong from inside the church. You know, I was raised in such a way where you just stuff down emotions, you pledge on, you do the right thing, and you function. And to be honest, I was really good at functioning. I was really good at performing and doing the right thing. But inevitably, I was hurting people. And I thought that I was helping them, but I was functioning for them the way I functioned internally for myself. And I knew that I didn't feel emotionally connected with God, that I had the good theology, I had the right knowledge, I was based on the Bible and in truth. But when it came down to it, I didn't feel really connected with Him. And I didn't realize part of my disconnection was the internal way that I learned to function from childhood, and that I was pushing that on others. Let me give you an example. If I was upset about something, like say in my marriage, there was something going on and I felt very sad or very alone, then I would invalidate myself and I'd be like, you know, it could be worse. He could be addicted to porn. He could be on drugs. He could be all these things. You shouldn't be feeling sorry for yourself. And so I have this internal kind of negative, critical narration going on where I would kind of shame myself into believing the right thing and being grateful. And I thought that this like kind of shaming of my inner self was going to lead to true gratitude. And I was kind of inevitably taught this through good teachings in the church, right? Like, because we should be thankful. We should celebrate the good things about our spouses. But what I didn't know is that I was allowed to be sad over things that were happening that I didn't understand. And that God actually cared about my sadness and He wasn't up there shaming me, saying like, Jenny, you're just negative and critical and you need to get over this. That voice wasn't actually God's voice. God's voice is actually compassion. So when other people would come to me with their things, their hardships, the things they were walking through, instead of meeting them where they were and understanding their perspective and having compassion and grace for them, I would come at them with the same critical, negative, shaming voice that I used on myself. You know, it could be a lot worse. You should be thankful for what you have. And I thought it was my job to rescue them out of their emotions by kind of being critical and shaming them for having those emotions, because that's how I internally functioned myself. Little did I know that not only was that not God's voice, that was a voice of the enemy. The enemy is filled with criticism. And the way that I was using that in my own life was to protect myself from disappointment by protecting myself from hoping too much. Like if someone came into my life or if something happened, then I'd be like, well, I don't want to get my hopes up. Like, even like, let's say getting pregnant. Well, I don't want to get excited because I could miscarry. I don't want to get excited because, something could go wrong. I better guard my heart. Or, well, I don't want to, I'll believe it when I see it. I don't believe that we're going to get the house loan until, it goes through. So I can't celebrate right now. Or, I would just constantly have this critical negative voice inside my head that I was using to kind of think about the worst thing that could happen instead of love, which hopes the best, according to 1 Corinthians 14. And I couldn't see that I was partnering with that criticism and doubt in order to protect myself, in order to not be disappointed. And what I was actually doing was blocking my own hope, blocking like the hopeful expectation of, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get pregnant, or this is gonna be a really fun vacation, or I can't wait to buy this house, or whatever it was. It could be the littlest thing or the biggest thing. I would not get excited because I was so internally, subconsciously, desperately afraid of being disappointed. And so living a life with no excitement and no hope for the future is living a life of no hope. And so I wouldn't have hope. And then I was impressing that on others. So once I myself started internally getting more healthy and recognizing that God cares about ministering to my heart, that he doesn't look at me annoyed and call me a grumbler or complainer, that he actually really cares and he's gentle and kind and compassionate, I could align my inner thoughts with the voice of God, with the mind of Christ, instead of with the critical, negative, shaming voice of the enemy. And when I was able to do that internally for myself, I was able to do that for others out loud. I was able to see them where they were. I was able to understand them and not feel like it was my job to criticize their thought process, but really be able to meet them in where they were. The same way Jesus met Mary and Martha in their grief, and he didn't shame them and say, well, this is all for my glory. I don't know why you're getting upset. You should know I could raise him from the dead. Like, he didn't. He entered into their grief and their sadness. And that's what we're supposed to do for other people. That is compassion. That is love. That is gentleness and kindness. And inside the church, sometimes we kind of subconsciously or consciously get the wrong ideas about what we're supposed to do. And it makes people feel not heard, not seen, not cared about. The truth is that we all go through hard times, and that Jesus cares about our emotional experience. He enters into grief. He cares about shame. He cares about the things that we walk through with compassion and gentleness. And that's how we should be to other people, to represent Christ to them. I'm not saying that we agree with all their narratives or that we agree with all their conclusions, but we have compassion with their perspective. And as we have compassion with their perspective, they feel known and seen and understood, and their heart is actually opened and more primed to receive grace and instruction after they're connected with. So instead of coming straight in hot and telling them how they're wrong and how they should think differently, maybe we validate them. We let them know that that makes sense, that they see things the way that they do. And then gently ask questions that would invoke their own curiosity to be able to see things differently. Do you think that's the only explanation for that? Could there be something else? Do you think that's how God sees that? Or do you think he would tell you that he sees things a little bit differently? I'm going to give you a solution that's really going to help you to apply the two biggest understandings that I have about cultivating deep, amazing friendships. But let's talk about those two things first. It's not our job to change people's perspectives. And so the number one thing that I've learned with friendship is to validate others, help them feel seen and understood. And sometimes it's as simple as putting ourselves in their shoes, putting ourselves in the amount of information that they have, and really trying to understand the way that they see it, and then let them know that that's hard, that would be overwhelming, that would be sad, and enter into that with them and make them feel seen and known. And before I tell you the thing, which I think is the absolute key to deep friendships, I want to talk about Job and his friends. I recently was reading through Job, and what is absolutely fascinating about this is that the very beginning of the book and the very end of the book, that God says that Job was a righteous man. And what's so interesting is that he goes through these hard things. He has these friends who at first enter into the grief And I believe what happened is they couldn't sit with the discomfort of what was going on with Job. Like they had to make sense of it, and they couldn't just stay in that place of grief and mourning with him because they were so uncomfortable subconsciously themselves with what was going on that they had to make sense of it, because that would cause them to actually question God and question his motives and question his goodness. So they started blaming Job. They started telling him that he must be the problem. It must be his fault. And Job maintained that it was not his fault. Now, let's mind you that Job was literally cursing the day he was born. Job was in turmoil. He was questioning God. He was questioning his own life. And in the end, God told Job's friends to repent, and that they needed to make sacrifices or have Job make sacrifices for them, and that they were the ones that were wrong. And he said in the end that Job was righteous. He did not count it against Job that he was in turmoil, that he was emotional, that he was questioning God, that he was cursing the day that he was born. Like, God's okay with us going through deep, traumatic, big emotions. He's okay with us being mad at him, with questioning him, with not understanding. That is not sin, because God never told Job to repent, and he never said that Job sinned. He said that the friends sinned. And what did the friends do? They invalidated Job. They accused Job. They didn't stay with him in his grief and in his mourning. And so that to me was so interesting to look at, because it's like, okay, God can handle our emotions. He can handle big, hard things, and that we don't have to make sense of stuff. We just have to tarry with people in their hard places and wait on God to do what he's doing. That's all our job is to love them, to be with them, to enter into the grief with them, to support them, to remind them of truth. But our job is not to correct them, not to make sense of the situation, not to figure it out, because really that's us just grasping for control, us grasping for our own understanding. And so when that happens, we're actually the ones in sin. So here is the number one most important thing, and I'm going to explain why it's so powerful, is that when we are vulnerable with others about what's really going on inside of us, about our emotions, which many of us have learned not to do this. We've learned to protect ourselves by not being transparent, not being real, not being vulnerable. I remember there was this time, a long time ago, like over 10 years ago, I was doing someone's hair, and I was explaining to them that I just found out that one of my primary family members was homosexual. And it was someone that was a parent or grandparent in my life. Like, it was very shocking. Didn't make sense. There was this big history that came out, and it was hard for me to talk to anyone about it because, I'm a Christian. I was raised inside the church and all those things. And then this person had that very thing, and they were like, oh my gosh, my mom is gay. And it was like, I would have never expected that this person really could understand what I was going through. And because I chose to step out and to be vulnerable and to share what I was going through and share my struggle, they were able to share theirs, and we were able to find each other in this place. And I literally don't know anyone else that has gone through the exact, personally, in my circle of people that has gone through that thing. But it taught me something so important, that when we're brave enough to be honest and to be vulnerable, it gives other people the opportunity to be brave and to be vulnerable. It actually opens the door for them. And then everyone's no longer pretending or protecting each other. We're feeling seen and known and understood. And then you have people to walk through with you. I think that whenever we instead choose to present or choose to pretend, that we are actually projecting a false person. We're not projecting a real person that is really going through struggles. We're projecting a person that we think is acceptable for people to connect with. Maybe, we're just really fake, and we're like, hey, I'm good, it's great. And we think it's being gracious and it's being kind, and that we're not going to burden people and all these things. But really, we're not being authentic. And even if they feel connected to that person that we're presenting to be, because we aren't really sharing the whole picture, we will never feel known and seen and understood. We will never feel connected with, because we literally are basically presenting a mask. And we know that we're behind that mask. They might or might not know, but because we are hiding behind this mask, they cannot connect with us. And so they are connecting with a false person. And so then we don't feel known and seen because we refuse to really put ourselves out there. So it's like us ourselves are causing ourselves to not feel known and seen because we're so afraid of getting hurt. We're so afraid of being rejected. We're so afraid of all these things. But if we would just be brave, sure, there's going to be toxic people out there that are going to hurt us, but God's got our back. But he understands us. There are going to be more people that understand us and know us and see us than people that wrongly turn against us and accuse us. And if that happens, it's just an opportunity for us to go deeper in the Lord. Jesus felt betrayal. He felt accused. He felt misunderstood, even by his own mother and brother. And it gave him an opportunity to have grace and to have love and compassion for them. And so we don't need to be afraid of the rejection. We need to look at it as an opportunity to grow deeper with the Lord in these places that he also walked. And so we have to be vulnerable. That way that we can be known and seen for who we are. And then we have to validate and see others for where they're at and then trust that God will change them. And if you just do these two things, I really believe that you will start seeing a change around you. So the solution, I want you to be the solution. Everyone has a different place in life. And so like me, young mother, little kids, several years ago, I was really feeling the need for intentional community. All my friends were having kids. It kind of overruns our life. We're just running in circles with our families. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to build a solution. So I built something called Table and Bread. And I invited 7 girlfriends. And it was that we were every 6 weeks, one person, because there's 8 of us, we're going to host a dinner. We were going to host a dinner in our home or in a location, and we were going to set a beautiful table, and we were going to have delicious food, and we were going to have a night to talk and to hang out. And it became such an amazing time for us to spend together, and that we all committed to it because it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice to once a year host a beautiful dinner, to make food. And you could do this in a lot of different ways. And after this first year, I think we did more like potluck style and a little bit more casual, more easy, things like that. But it was still fun. It gave us creativity and inspiration. For you, it might be a book club. It might be a breakfast club. It might be a walking with strollers club. It might be an online virtual community for grieving why. During this last season, went through a tremendously hard time. And I remember thinking inside the church, there just needs to be a place where people feel known and seen and understood, and where they don't feel corrected or accused, where there's just space for people to be themselves. And so I actually created an online community called my Mentee Circle. And it's where I can mentor people, but most importantly, it's where people can find a prayer partner, someone that they can weekly touch base with and just to feel seen and known and supported, or even people that there's specific side groups that I've created for people that are grieving, people that are starting YouTube channels. It's kind of lonely whenever you're the only one you know in person that's really doing something. And so it's so helpful to talk to other people that are going through the same journey. If that sounds like something that you would enjoy, check out the link below.